Welcome to the Inspire Wealth podcast with Prof M, where we dive into the world of real estate investing and wealth building strategies. I'm your host, Mallory Meehan. I'm a real estate professor, attorney, and seasoned investor here to guide you through the ins and outs of creating wealth through real estate. If you're looking to take your real estate knowledge to the next level, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our latest episodes and offerings. Welcome to another episode of Inspire Wealth. I am your host, Professor Mallory Meehan, aka Prof M, and I am joined with my first Canadian guest, Janci. Janci, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I am really well. Thank you.
Good. I'm so excited. So, Janci, we were just chatting a little bit about kind of your journey to real estate. Why don't you kind of give us an idea of, how this all happened for you and basically give us some background on the journey you've taken so far?
For sure. So I started in the fitness industry, working early mornings, late nights, noon hours, that sort of stuff. And I had a personal training client that was doing real estate, and she had this baller lifestyle that I really wanted. And she just kept asking me, so how are you going to retire on a fitness wage? And I couldn't answer the question. And I had some sleepless nights and realized I have to do something else. I'm never going to retire working the way I am. And she said, well, what happens if you get sick? I said, well, I just work through it. She's like, there will come a time you cannot work through it, like when you want to have babies. I'm like, that's true. So I took a deep dive into learning about real estate. There was an info session that I ended up showing up at, and she showed up there to network. And she's like, this is how I did it. So ended up taking that education, went into business with my parents actually,
Oh, nice.
for my first one. But it's because they didn't really understand long-term wealth or anything either. I don't think they had a very good retirement plan either. Um, and they're like, no, we need to do this. So our very first deal, we ended up, some people, you throw it out there. Oh yeah, I'm getting into real estate. And somebody said, well, I have a property. My uncle died and we have to deal with it. Are you interested? And so we had done one course and we didn't know what we were doing. And that negotiation was like the longest. Like, it was like time stood still. It was like 45 minutes standing in the kitchen saying, oh, well, what do you think? What do you think? And I just threw out a number. I said 60,000 because it was a dump and it was full of stuff. And they said, yeah, sure. That's fine. And I was like, oh my God, this just happened. Um,
Did you think to yourself, man, should I have offered 50?
yeah, I know. Well, fair market value would have been about 150,000, probably
Oh,
125.
okay. Okay.
But I was thinking, I don't want this because this is going to be a lot of work. And there's no way. Like, I just wanted to start the ball rolling and see what they said. I didn't think they were going to say yes. They ended up not cleaning it out. So I knocked another $2,500 off. So our very first property was 57.5. We came down, my parents live in a different city. They came down every weekend. I was there every day. And that was the nice thing about my industry. I could kind of, I had my early mornings, but then I have 3, 4 hours in the morning. I can go and do some work and some painting and stuff.
Yeah.
So after we got it renovated, it took about 4 or 5 weeks. I was actually working as a massage therapist at a clinic as well. And the patient was like, I'll move in. I'll move in. I live with a bunch of other people. We had a huge mine expansion here in our city, and we had a ton of workers from out of province. And I had it pre-rented actually before I even got possession.
Oh,
And so we had to get it done in like 6
wow.
weeks. And so then he moved in, I want to say around November 1st, and we paid for it cash on a line of credit, or paid for it on a line of credit, renovated it. Then we were able to get the tenant, the leases, go to the bank and say, hey, we want to put a mortgage on it. So that it appraised at 125,000 at the
Nice.
time. So we didn't know what we did, and now everybody terms it as a BRRRR. So you buy, you renovate, you rent it, you refinance, and then move on. And so that was our very first deal in the industry. So I started in buy and hold real estate thinking, oh, this is going to replace my income. I'm going to make so much cash flow. And it was a big smack in the face and was like, the furnace just went. I got to replace the shingles. The tenant just trashed it or whatever. And so we weren't really taking a ton of money out, but we just don't take any money out anymore. Like that is an asset that is operating, that is like its own little business. It has its own bank account, everything, it's separate. I know of other investors that don't do it like that. You have to treat this as a business. It's not a side hustle. Like you have to do it the right way. But that's a little side note. But
Yeah.
that's how I got started in the
Well,
industry.
I think that's awesome. I think that you were, definitely ahead of your time without even realizing you were doing the BRRRR strategy. And then voila, here we are.
Yeah,
Okay, so you did your first deal. What year was that?
2011.
Okay, so 2011 happens. You realize that long-term holds are not necessarily for cash flow. They're probably for, okay, let's let it grow. Let's have the equity build up. We can use everything as a tax deduction. But at what point did you decide to either change what you were doing or kind of flip the script?
Well, we pulled the money we made from that, paid for our education, and then was able to put towards our next one, which was a duplex. And then we did one more deal after that as our small little company of the four of us. And I want to just say, yes, my parents were there, but they didn't have the money either. They were using debt. So it's not like I had a silver spoon in my mouth. We came from credit cards and lines of credit. And so they were kind of at the point now where, this is your dream. This is what you want to do. So if you're going to do it, just do it. So we had to flip our strategy, so to speak. So we ended up having to flip because that's going to be the fastest way that we can make some money.
Mhm.
So we were able to get a bank because we have our primary residence already. I'm self-employed. My husband has his job, but qualifying for another mortgage
Mhm.
is significantly harder. And I had some student loan debt and stuff like that. So we had to get really creative on how we were able to get that done. And we were able to get it. I think we made about $40,000 on that first flip. We
Okay.
did all of the work ourselves, late nights, weekends, friends and family coming to help. Like we didn't do the electrical and plumbing, but flooring, painting, like all the cosmetic stuff that I could do. And yeah, we made a really decent profit. And then I had another real estate mentor roll through town. He's like, "Yeah, that's great, but you just created another full-time job for yourself."
Right, exactly.
So he's like, "You want to start a family. So how are you going to do what you just did and have a family?" I'm like, "I can't." He's like, "Let me teach you how to run this as a business." I was like, "Okay." So we took some of that money, put it into coaching again. And then fast forward, I think that was around 2014 or 2015, because I was pregnant when what I was starting to work with them. And so it was about 2015. And now 32 flips later. My oldest son is 9. My youngest one is going to be 7 soon. So that was the thing. If I didn't do it, how am I going to make any money?
Yeah,
Can't
exactly.
we can't really live off of my husband's income. We could, but it was tight. But we needed that income. So it wasn't like I was very consistent. Like one year I did 10. Like I
Wow.
was going for it.
Yeah, you
And
were.
then other years it was like 2 or 3. But when I was rolling, I was rolling. And I had some construction crews. I kept them busy for 2, 3 years straight. And they didn't exclusively work for me, but I took priority for sure. And
That's
that was
all.
the other thing, I paid them.
Yeah.
You have to pay
That's
your
that's
con.
what a lot of people don't understand. If you want good help and you want them to be reliable, you have to make sure that you're paying them well and on
Yeah,
time, right?
yeah, yeah.
So when you were in this coaching program and they were going through and telling you to create this like a business, how did your mindset have to kind of shift from what you were doing to now exclusively thinking, okay, I can't be the one there all the time. So like what happened there? Explain to me.
It wasn't like one day I just woke up and it shifted. It took years. I would go to these real estate events and conferences and stuff like that, and I would introduce myself for my fitness business first, and then real estate investor.
Mm.
And one of my coaches was like, "Why are you doing that? No one's going to take you seriously as a real estate investor if you keep using that as your second intro." So it was an identity shift. I didn't, yeah, I had a fitness business, but Was I a business person per se? Not really. I had worked at Sunglass Hut actually for 7 or 8 years, even worked in New Zealand down there. And to be honest, that was like free education. That was my store. There's nobody else. I'm the manager. I have to run all the schedules and do everything, inventory. So I learned kind of working there how to run a business, income expense sheets and
Mhm.
goals and whatever. So that was kind of my introduction to it, but it did take time. Um, I would say once I started having my kids, like once I started into flipping and did a few and was successful, then I was like, no, this is what I'm doing. I think now when people see me, I've been around long enough now that that's what I do is real
Yeah.
estate. Yeah. So it
There's no
wasn't,
more fitness. There's no more fitness. You are a real estate investor.
well, I was still teaching Zumba till like last year, but it's because I loved it.
Well, I
I'm
think that's
gonna get paid to exercise.
a nice like hobby, side hustle, but like you and your identity, you're now a real estate investor and you should give yourself credit for, being there.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I have like a two-part question. So I also want to educate people on knowing that real estate's not easy, even though, we see all these people making this much money, blah, blah, blah. So I want you to talk about two different examples. One example where you completely hit it out of the park and you're one of your flips. And then on the converse, one that really just kind of shit the bed and you were like, what do I do?
Yeah. So it probably was my third flip. I was working, we had known this realtor. He's a friend, like we know him through sports, that sort of stuff. He'd been around for a long time, but I should have went with my gut and knew that he was trying to tell us what we wanted to hear. Oh yeah, the ARV on this, so the after repair value is going to be 330,000 for sure all day. Like you guys do great work. And I was like, that seems like really high, but cool. If we can do it, let's do it. And this was during, I was probably 6 months pregnant at this time. So we bought this thing and we paid 120,000, but the reno was like 130,000. So lesson learned, don't buy a property and your reno is more, because if you are halfway through, you're not necessarily going to get your money back. So that was lesson learned. And also by the end, the market had dropped. We started listing at 315, dropped to 300, went to 280, fired him, and then another realtor was like, you guys are crazy. We ended up getting $275,000 for that thing. So our profit just went and gone. And I know this was the one time in my life I went against one of my coaches, and he was like, that's business. You don't have, like, you just tell your investors that you can't give it back. I'm like, no, my integrity, my reputation is on this. So we figured out a way. There was one person invested that, can we pay you out on the next one? Yes. And then we reduced the other returns on those other investors by 3 or 4%. And we're like, we're sorry, we didn't get you because we were paying pretty good returns in the beginning, like 12 to 15%.
Oh,
And then
wow.
we dropped them to 9 because we were in the beginning, like we had
Yeah.
no track record. We had to pay out good. Um, so some of them were bummed, but they're like, no, we understand. I didn't lose their money. I
Right.
just didn't pay them the full amount. They were
Right.
still happy with 9.
Yeah.
And then we did the next flip. I paid everybody their 3 or 4% difference back. And it was like right before Christmas. So everybody was like, oh my God. And that move snowballed into more and more investors. And it's a couple phone calls and I can have $1 million, $2 million raised for another deal. But it's because I did that at that time. And I think that was a better choice. So yeah, that was the one time it did not go well. Every other time we've done actually pretty good. Maybe like $2,000-3,000 profit, but we're not losing like we did on that one. The home run one was another investor was just starting out. He got a lead off of, like, I don't know, Kijiji, like a Craigslist kind of ad that he did. And he didn't know what to do. He was panicking. He's like, oh my God, Janci, can you help me? Like, yeah, okay. So we went to the property and This place was a dump. It was a bachelor, and it was gross. It was gross. There was like change on the floor, like coins, and I went to go pick them up, and I was like, oh my God, there's like $10 of coins on the ground. I go to pick them up. There's toenail clippings all over the floor. I was like, bleh, oh my God. And
You're
I
like, I
threw
don't
the
want
money
this
down. I was like, oh my
$10.
God, oh my God,
Oh,
oh my God. And our contractors that went and did all the demo, they were like, this is nasty. Like there's cobwebs in the shower in both. Like he wasn't showering, that guy.
oh my God.
So anyways, he's like, I understand you need to make a profit on this. And he's like, I know it's not, because it was not in a state where he would want to list it, and he wasn't going to clean it up. So he said, well, what about 70,000? And I was like, this is we ended up selling this thing for also like 300,000 as well.
Wow.
So 70,000, and it was already in good shape. He probably could have listed it at like 180, 190 as is, and would have got it if he just would have cleaned it up a bit. So he was happy with that. But I was wanting to, make him feel like this is a big win for him, not feeling like he's losing. So he had a couple of vehicles. He's one guy. He's driving like a new Volkswagen vehicle. He has a Dodge Dakota Sport truck and another Honda Civic sitting in there. He's like, oh, that one doesn't work, and this is just the vehicle I take to Sarcan to recycle my cans. And I was like, well, what are you gonna do with them? I guess I gotta sell them. So I ended up offering him 74,000, and I got the truck and the car. I ended up selling the car for $2,000, and I kept the truck for another, I don't know, 5 years. It was good for just ripping around the city and hauling stuff and whatever. And then right around like 2021, because there was after COVID, there was no used vehicles, and used vehicle prices were just going through the roof. So I ended up selling that one for $5,000.
Damn. Man, that was a
So
run.
that was a home run. I haven't had another one like that since. So yeah, we profited over 100 grand on that one. Like it
And
was.
so, how do you typically find like your opportunities that you come across? Is it just because you've built up this network that people are coming to you? Do you still do like outreach, or what's your strategy?
It is now. A lot of new investors are like, well, how do you do it? But my city is only 230,000 people. It's not very big. And I am the one that people know. Like my name comes up when I'm the flipper. I the last 4 deals that I've done were all referrals. I did not have to actively look. In the beginning, I was MLS, I was doing some ads, but even the ads I found didn't really work. We were doing mailers in the beginning too. Um, I think we got one. Oh, funny story about that. I sent out, we were driving for dollars. So this
Sure.
is one of those tactics my coach was telling me. So we drive, car seat in the back. My son's having a nap. I'm driving, my husband's writing down, and we're calling out numbers, and then we go and mail them letters. And I had like a script, and I used my middle name, and so I know I had all this tracked in a book and in a spreadsheet. And then years later, I went and was looking at an MLS listing with my realtor. I walk into the kitchen, and the realtor goes, "Oh, hey, look at this letter." And it's in yellow with red writing, and it is my letter from probably 2 years prior. And that guy kept my letter, and it was sitting on the kitchen counter. And I was like, this is so wild. And I do remember having a conversation with him. He was an elderly man. He was kind of transitioning into a home. So
Mhm.
he was just kind of, he wasn't quite there yet, but he's like, I'll maybe call you in 6 months, kind of something. And then I
Yeah.
never really heard from him. But yeah, I think he ended up passing away, and then the family was dealing with it, and they just saw this letter. They just kept it on the counter. But I was like, oh,
So
so I
great.
did end up buying it. And um, yeah, we did pretty good on that one too.
That's
I
awesome.
like the design on that one. It was fun.
Yeah. So I know that flipping isn't necessarily what you're kind of like focusing on now. You've kind of transitioned into other areas. Tell us about what areas you're now shifting into and some of the lessons that you've learned.
So if everybody's watching HGTV and watching all the flipping shows, yeah, they're super cool. I used to watch them all the time too. But those numbers, they're missing a lot of expenses in there. So if you're crushing $150,000 on that flip, okay, cut that in half, and then and that's maybe closer to what the number actually is.
Well, because
Yeah,
I
there's a
think
lot
a lot of them have their own construction company that they're
that
then
too.
paying out, and so those numbers are not necessarily what, you and I would maybe have if we had to pay out, like, a subcontractor.
Correct. Yeah. And the one way I did save is I ended up generaling a lot of it.
Mm,
I was in control of the design aspect, so I'm buying the light fixtures, the faucets, the
mhm,
flooring, like I'm buying all of that and saying, "Here, this is what I need you to do." And that worked really well. And I was in control of the schedule. I think I had a really good group of guys that were very skilled at what they do, but they were not necessarily skilled in organization and those sorts of things.
yeah.
So I was helping them with that and saying, look, this is our schedule, this is where I need you to be. And then if they had other jobs, it worked around my stuff because, okay, drywall's coming in on this day, you guys got to make sure. And then from there, all of the guys ended up becoming friends and would work on other projects together. So my electrician, my plumber, the drywall painters, like all of them, and then they would just go around and do other jobs as well. But yeah, I helped them in that aspect. Um, Now I've lost track. What was your question again?
I said, "What area are you transitioning into from
Oh, right.
what kind of investing are you doing, and what are some of the things that you've learned since the transition?"
So the transition, the point of that story was because it's a lot of work and I have my two little kids at home and but that gave me the freedom to do it at home. And I had again, I go to conferences and that sort of stuff and I've been around long enough that they're like, "You know you can do bigger deals." Like the work and the organization and the delegation that you're doing for this, you can do it on a larger multifamily, add a couple zeros, like the acquisition's the same. Yeah, there's a few extra steps and some more cost in the upfront, but you can do it. So I've gone and done a few things. There's some stuff in Mexico that I've been looking at. I went to Houston in May, just looking at another friend that had done a project, and as a Canadian going to the US. And that's one thing, a lot of Canadians, it's tough here. Like, you guys have it so much better down in the US. Like, there's states that are more landlord friendly, and it's just easier to, I think, get in. Here, there's so much regulation and policy and our acquisition costs and the taxes and the interest rates. Like you guys have interest rate things as well, but um, I saw a Canadian guy that sold his entire portfolio and is moving it down there. And he asked ChatGPT, is there any Canadian market that is as good as the top 100 in the US? And it was like, no, just a straight up no. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny.
That is kind of funny. I guess
So
I've never really thought about, the struggles because I guess have you had partners who were like US citizens who you can lend like or how does that part work if you are Canadian but you're partnering on a deal in the US with a US citizen?
haven't done that. That is much more complex. It's a lot. Either you set up a brand new LLC in the US and you are a US entity, and then you can get US investors involved in that.
Mhm.
Or you start a Canadian like REIT, a real estate investment trust,
Yep.
and then the Canadian REIT can invest in still a US LLC. Like it has to be a business kind of investing into a business or an entity investing into another entity that
Mhm.
buys the asset. So, and it would be the same for Mexico as well, but it is a little bit more complex down there. I'm not sure what the strategy will be. Maybe it's just easier if I just go and buy my own stuff and not worry about because there's no repercussions. The safety net is gone. Like, how do you go, say a deal goes south and how are they going to get their money back? They can't necessarily tie it to title. I've heard of
Right.
people do that and it just goes poof. Like, well, they didn't pay their fee to Comoso, so you actually don't have title. So it's those sorts of things um, that you'd have to navigate. You really have to be boots on the ground. And my kids are still young. Like, I'll get down there. I'll get doing some cool stuff. Maybe it's not even going to be there. It'll be somewhere else. Someone
Yeah.
mentioned about small boutique hotels because Airbnb is getting shut down all over the place. So I haven't gotten into the short-term rental game just because I knew it was so volatile. Like you just don't know. One day you're renting out, and then the next day your city or your market can just be like, no, we don't. Our rental market is so small. We're canceling it. We can't support it anymore. So I'm kind of in a limbo phase. I know that there's another deal in another market that somebody's approached me about. I think it's an 18 unit building. I
Okay.
just got somebody sent me another 32 in another market. They're like, oh, I heard you're interested. So I don't actively look really at all. If I put some
Way to
effort
be.
into
Yeah.
it, I definitely could. Um, I guess because you have a totally different market than I do. I would love to partner up with somebody that's doing bigger stuff than me. And like I have skills, I have things that I know that I'm good at. Um, and I just want to like not ride their coattails, but just be a part of the team, be
Yeah.
a part of the project and learn by doing. And I think that's some of the best thing. Yeah, there's lots of theory and there's lots of things that you need to learn, but you also have to get your feet wet.
Yeah.
You have to pull the trigger and actually buy something.
Yep.
So a lot of times, because I was doing some real estate coaching with the company that I was with, and they're just scared or they have analysis paralysis and they'll sit there and it needs to be perfect. I'm like, no deal is ever perfect.
No. No
And
deal.
even when you think the numbers are perfect, something will happen.
Yeah.
Your sewer line will go or your furnace will go. Like there's always something. So the best learning is going to be actually doing. So yeah, I didn't know anything about apartment buildings and I just jumped in. Like it can't
Well,
be that much different.
I think that the best part about apartments is that you're only fixing one roof. You're only fixing
Yes.
one furnace or, one HVAC or whatever versus having a whole portfolio of single family where one thing happens and it can continue happening because they're all different.
Yeah. And we have a combination of everything. Duplex, triplex, single family. We have about 10 of those, and then I have this building. So we're at about 27 doors
Nice.
for all of it. And when I like rewind back when I started, I thought I would think, oh my God, I've just hit the big time. And yeah, like it's pretty significant. But I feel like a lot of times people are just like, you need to get to 100 doors, you need to get to 200 doors. And I'm like, I still want a life. I want to have my sanity. I definitely hit some burnout last year. I was doing a flip. I had the apartment building. I was doing some coaching. I was still teaching fitness classes. I had my kids' activities. I was coaching my kids' team. Like, I got to a point where it was like, I need a break. And the people at the company were like, that's totally fine. Like, just do what you want to do. And so it's been nice. They've kind of given me the freedom to do whatever I want to do. And if I want to continue, we can do something. But for right now, I'm just so content. It's more of a reflection year, I think. If another deal comes up, then awesome. But it's more like, okay, where do I want to put my focus? Like, is it going to be the Mexico stuff? Is it going to be multifamily? Do I just want to do more events and see where I want to dip my toe, that sort of stuff? So
Right.
yeah, that's
Yeah, I
kind of
think
where
I
I'm at.
think that the power of networking is just one of those things that can never like be diminished because it's
Yeah.
all about who you know and who knows you. And I think that, building those connections and networks, that's awesome. And I mean, I would love to have a additional conversation with you to talk about potential partnerships and getting you, into the US market because, that's my jam. And, I'm all about partnership. And I think that people don't realize that having partners is so much better when you're in a team environment. And when something goes wrong, you have people to, bounce ideas off of to help support you. And, that is how I do all of my deals now. It's all partnership driven.
And I think one thing that I've tried looking for other people, when you look at other flippers or they're usually like a husband wife team or just a guy. Yeah, my husband's there, but he makes zero decisions. I'll try and bounce ideas off him, like, hey, what do you think about this? Or like, hey, here's this flooring, or maybe we should pull out this wall. He's like, Janci, I don't care. He's like, you make all the decisions for this. Yeah. He's there, he's part of the business, but he's not part of the business. I am 99% of this whole thing. And I think that's really significant, and was a young mom at this whole time. So what I want to do also is inspire people and inspire women to say, like, you can do this. I was at the busiest, most chaotic time of my life, and I was still getting it done. Now that I can kind of take a step back and look at how much hustle and grind I put in for so many years, and now I'm just kind of reaping the benefits and just sitting back and, okay, that was really hard, but
Yeah,
I did it.
right.
Um, and it was literally by myself. Yes, I had contractors and everything, but I didn't have a team. It was me and a little bit of my husband. But that was another thing about doing bigger deals. That's going to springboard you into the next level. And I've watched a lot of other investors over the years. There's another really successful one from our province, and she's been doing stuff down in the States for a long time and is really good friends with Brandon Turner. And that's how, like, it springboarded her career. Granted, she has no kids and is not in a relationship. Like, she's just living it up. But um I'm in a different state of life. And I think a lot of people are more like me, a stay-at-home mom that knows the benefit of real estate, doesn't know how to get in, and feels like, oh, I can't do it because my kids are here. Well, no, you have to do it because your kids are here. What else is your option, right? And that's the way that I think of it, um, with lots of things too. This is why I'm doing it, is for my family and for the time freedom. I think the bigger flex is the freedom. A lot of people want, oh, I want $1 million a year, and I want this, and I want that. That's great, and I would love that too. But for me personally and my goals, I feel like I'm at a really good place right now. And now it's just like, sit back and what's my next goal? Because the time freedom thing, I can pick up my kids whenever I want. I can volunteer for all of the school activities and all of the things, and still coach their teams and be at all the hockey practices and the football practices. Like, this is what I wanted, and I'm living it. And the only way that that happened was because I took a chance, believed in myself, and started in real estate.
Yeah.
That's super cheesy, but it is.
No, I love that. I mean, I have a 4-year-old, so I totally get, the work-life balance and being able to say, "Hey, you gotta come with me today, and you're gonna be part of the team, and we're gonna get things done." And um, I give you mad props for all that you did with having 2 kids and the badass that you are, like, definitely a true inspiration.
Well, thank you. The
So,
kids actually
Jancy.
loved it too, though. Like, they love
Oh,
going
yeah.
to sites and
Oh, and
seeing
that's
all the
it's
things.
just another level of bonding. It's like, okay, you may be watching TV on the couch with your kids, or you're bringing them out to job sites and, teaching them actual real life work, like, lessons. And,
Skills, yeah.
I mean, I think kids just love to learn, and we just have to give them the opportunity to learn and then teach them by doing. And so if
Yes.
you're teaching them what hard work looks like, they're going to naturally have that built into their core.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Jancy, are you reading any good books right now that you would recommend people who are, maybe thinking about getting into real estate or just, on the fence?
There's a lot of good real estate books. So there's Money People Deal. That's that one in the back there. That was one of my real estate mentors, Stefan Arnio. Are you familiar with Stefan at all?
No, I'm not.
No. He passed away in 2020, just as the pandemic was hitting. He was 33 years old, but he practically worked himself to death. um, but he was a very good writer. He was younger than me. Um, I've been in a like, I'm really good friends with the family, and they were really supportive of me kind of teaching his methods and stuff. And he was really the one that springboarded me into doing this as a business. So Money People Deal is really good. The I guess the premise, you need three parts to any deal. You need the money, you need the people, and you need the deal. And if you can get two sides of that triangle, you can create something. And then you can all either bring somebody in or learn that other piece. So it's a really good basic knowledge book. Rich Dad Poor Dad was always a good one. That was one of the first ones that I had gotten into. I have been doing a lot of audiobooks. I really like the self-help people. They're not even necessarily real estate books.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with mindset. I really like Joe Dispenza. I like listening to Ed Milet. I like listening to Mel Robbins and like all of those people, Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins. And I've never been to any of their events, but I would love to. And like, I'll tell you this story about the spoon. Like, so I'm sure you've heard about The Secret. And I was cutting grass for our city one summer. And this would have been years ago because you didn't even have earbuds. Like, they wouldn't allow you to listen to anything. So I'm literally weed whacking grass for 8 hours a day, just hearing this low hum. And so I was reading The Secret at the time. And I remember hearing or reading about the feather that falls on the ground in New York City. And it was, shouldn't have been there. So I was like, well, what can I find that's random? So I'm like, I'm gonna find a spoon in the ground. I'm gonna find a spoon in the ground and like visualize what the spoon is like. You know, it's probably the one every kid had growing up with the three little flowers on the top. And so it was about 23 days. And every day I was like visualizing this spoon. And then I found it in the grass. And I was like, oh my God, there's a spoon in the grass. And the guy I was working with, he's like, great, pick it up and throw it in the garbage. And so I like grabbed it, yoink, and put it in my pocket and brought it home. I was like, oh my God, I was just absolutely buzzing. And so that kind of propelled me into, if I can visualize this and focus on it enough, yes, there's work involved, like with these deals and stuff like that. I can't just visualize $1 million and it's just going to show up. But that was just the beginning of me being able to, I can do this. And yeah, if I really want to do 10 deals in a year, I could do this. And then all of a sudden, boom, I did it. And so that was just another thing. So those are the kind of the books that I really like reading, not necessarily real estate books, because they're
Yeah.
usually pretty dry.
I think life lesson books are really good.
Yes.
Just anything that can apply to people across multiple spectrums. Those are the types of books that I like
Yeah.
as well. Okay, Janci. So one final piece of advice for those maybe thinking about getting into real estate or, on the fence, stuck in analysis paralysis. I kind of know what I think you're going to say, but go ahead and give them your piece of advice.
For sure. I would say you just have to do it. This is the easiest point of entry. Um, Anybody can do it, doesn't matter your background, wherever you came from. Yes, you need to learn some things. You need to get some education on making sure you're doing it properly. But the only person holding you back is you, and you can do it. And if you don't have money, find people with money. It's that networking piece. You have value. Doesn't matter what your background is. Everybody has something to bring to the table. I'm a really good networker now. I never really was because I was so shy. I have zero real estate skill. I have zero construction skill. So I was really shy in the beginning, but then the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And the only way that you're going to be able to get there is by getting that first deal or going to that first conference or going to that first networking night. Getting out there, telling people that this is what you're doing. You can't be the world's best kept secret. Like, people need to know what you're doing. And that would be my advice. Go to events, go to things, pull the trigger, do the deal.
Love it. Love it. Well, Janci, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining. And for our listeners, that wraps it up for another episode of Inspire Wealth. Bye for now. And for those who want a more hands-on learning experience, check out our online courses at inspirewealtheducation.com. Whether you're just starting out or looking to expand your investment portfolio, I've created step-by-step guides and resources to help you achieve your financial goals. So hit that subscribe button and let's start building your wealth one episode at a time.